Hello everybody again. Video is about Ezekiel on number 40 to 43. Let's be about 1, 2, 3, 2.5 pages. Just over 2.5 pages. Speaking of, again, Ezekiel is a lot of communications, visions, and messages from God, and Ezekiel giving instruction of what to share and who to share it with. It's the 25th year of our exile, Ezekiel 40. The 25th year of our exile, the beginning of the year, on the 10th of the month, in the 14th year after the fall of the city. Again, it mentions, sometimes just mentions the year and the month, sometimes year, month, day, sometimes year and day. What those numbers have significance for, I do not know if they have significance. Here it mentions the 25th year, so number 25, the beginning of the year, which would be 1, on the 10th of the month, which would be 10, the 14th year after the fall of the city, which would be 14, so we got 25, 1, 10, 14. Those all mean something separately, all one big number. Don't know. He may let me know that it does have significance at some future date. On that very day, the hand of the Lord was on me, and he took me there. In visions of God, he took me to the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain, on whose south side were some buildings that looked like a city. He took me there, and I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze. He was standing in the gateway with a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. The man said to me, Son of man, look carefully and listen closely, and pay attention to everything I am going to show you, for that is why you have been brought here. Tell the people of Israel and everything you see. I saw a wall completely surrounding the temple area. The length of the measuring rod in the man's hand was 6 long cubits, each of which was a cubit and a handbreadth. He measured the wall. It was 1 measuring rod thick and 1 rod high. Then he went to the east gate. He climbed the steps and measured the threshold of the gate. It was 1 rod deep. The alcoves, the guards, were 1 rod long, 1 rod wide. Projecting walls between the alcoves were 5 cubits thick. The threshold of the gate next to the portico facing the temple was 1 rod deep. Then he measured the portico of the gateway. It was 8 cubits deep, and its jambs were 2 cubits thick. The portico of the gateway faced the temple. Inside the east gate were 3 alcoves on each side. The 3 had the same measurements, and the faces of the projecting walls on each side had the same measurements. Then he measured the width of the entrance of the gateway. It was 10 cubits, and its length was 13 cubits. In front of each alcove was a wall 1 cubit high, and the alcoves were 6 cubits square. Then he measured the gateway from the top of the rear wall of one alcove to the top of the opposite one. The distance was 25 cubits from one parapet opening to the opposite one. He measured along the faces of the projecting walls all around the inside of the gateway, 60 cubits. The measurement was up to the portico facing the courtyard. The distance from the entrance of the gateway to the far end of its portico was 50 cubits. The alcoves and projecting walls inside the gateway were surmounted by narrow parapet openings all around, as was the portico. The openings all around faced inward. The faces of the projecting walls were decorated with palm trees. Then he brought me into the outer court. There I saw some rooms and a pavement that had been constructed all around the court. There were 30 rooms along the pavement. It abutted the sides of the gateways and was as wide as they were long. This was the lower pavement. Then he measured the distance from the inside of the lower gateway to the outside of the inner court. It was 100 cubits, on the east side as well as on the north. Then he measured the length and width of the north gate, leading into the outer court. Its alcoves, 3 on each side, projecting walls and its portico had the same measurements as those of the first gateway. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its openings, its portico, and its palm tree decorations had the same measurements as those of the gate facing east. 7 steps led up to it, with its portico opposite them. There was a gate to the inner court facing the north gate, just as there was on the east. He measured from one gate to the opposite one. It was 100 cubits. Then he led me to the south side, and I saw the south gate. He measured its jambs, and its portico, and they had the same measurements as the others. The gateway and its portico had narrow openings all around, like the openings of the others. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. 7 steps led up to it, with its portico opposite them. It had palm tree decorations on the faces of the projecting walls on each side. The inner court also had a gate facing south, and he measured from this gate to the outer gate on the south side. It was 100 cubits. Then he brought me into the inner court through the south gate, and he measured the south gate. It had the same measurements as the others. Its The alcoves, projecting walls, and its portico had the same measurements as the others. The gateway and its portico had openings all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. This is like a long math problem, word problem. And prompted, or maybe prompting somebody to try to make a drawing of this based on, you don't necessarily have to know what a cubit is, how long a cubit is, but the scaled down version. Try to draw what it is he's describing. This may be the final temple, built temple. This could be entrance to the outer ring of heaven. I'm not sure. The inner court also had a gate facing south, and he measured from this gate to the outer gate. On the south side, it was 100 cubits. Then he brought me into the inner court through the south gate, and he measured the south gate, the same measurements as the others. The alcoves, projecting walls, and its portico had the same measurements as the others. The gateway and its portico had openings all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. The porticos of the gateways around the inner court were 25 cubits wide and 5 cubits deep. Its portico faced the outer court. Palm trees decorated its jambs, and 8 steps led up to it. Then he brought me to the inner court on the east side, and he measured the gateway, and had the same measurements as the others. Its alcoves, its projecting walls, and its portico had the same measurements as the others. The gateway and its portico had openings all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its portico faced the outer court. Palm trees decorated the jambs on either side. 8 steps led up to it. Then he brought me to the north gate and measured it. It had the same measurements as the others, as did its alcoves, its projecting walls, and its portico, and it had openings all around. It was 50 cubits long, 25 cubits wide. Its portico faced the outer court. Palm trees decorated the jambs on either side. 8 steps led up to it. The room with the doorway was by the portico and each of the inner gateways, where the burnt offerings were washed. In the portico of the gateway were 2 tables on each side, on which the burnt offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings were slaughtered. By the outside wall of the portico, the gateway, near the steps of the entrance of the north gateway were 2 tables. On the either side of the steps were 2 tables. So there were 4 tables on one side of the gateway and 4 on the other, 8 tables in all, on which the sacrifices were slaughtered. There were also 4 tables of dressed stone for the burnt offerings, each a cubit and a half long, a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit high. On them were placed utensils for slaughtering the burnt offerings and the other sacrifices, and double-pronged hooks, each a handbreadth long, were attached to the wall all around. The tables were for the flesh of the offerings. Outside the inner gate, within the inner court, were 2 rooms, one at the side of the north gate and facing south, another at the side of the south gate and facing north. He said to me, the room facing south is for the priests who guard the temple, the room facing north is for the priests who guard the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, who are the only Levites who may draw near to the Lord to minister before him. Then he measured the court. It was square, 100 cubits long and 100 cubits wide, and the altar was in front of the temple. He brought me to the portico of the temple and measured the jambs of the portico. They were 5 cubits wide on either side. The width of the entrance is 14 cubits, and its projecting walls were 3 cubits wide on either side. The portico was 20 cubits wide and 12 cubits from front to back. It was reached by a flight of stairs, and there were pillars on each side of the jambs. This sounds like he's describing the rebuilding of the temple back then. This Ezekiel is after David, Solomon. Excuse me. It's kind of describing the dimensions of the new temple. Chapter 41. Then the man brought me to the main hall and measured the jambs. The width of the jambs was 6 cubits on each side, the entrance was 10 cubits wide, and the projecting walls on each side of it were 5 cubits wide. He also measured the main hall. It was 40 cubits long, 20 cubits wide. So it goes on and on, this whole describing the inner measurements of this temple. So continue to go on through this, it's giving dimensions. Fast forward. And it all has significance because this is how he wanted it built. So as I said, if you want to, I may try to do this myself. It's a lot of measurements. Anybody's out there who's like graphic design, is good with drawing, wants to try to take it upon themselves to draw this out, have an idea of what the new temple is supposed to look like. I know they rebuilt the temple, so it's describing that, but the final temple, it could be describing that as well. Again, there are no burnt offerings anymore. There are no flesh offerings anymore. They're done away with. God doesn't want that. Let's see. Fast forward to Interesting. The building for the temple court was on the west side. Then he mentioned the temple. Then he mentioned the length of the building. Describing more of this. All description. Whole thing is describing it. Even on the 43. 43 is still describing everything. So that's all through 42 as well, description. 43 starts, then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant with his glory. The vision I saw was like the vision I had seen when he came to destroy the city, and like the visions I had seen by the Kibar River, and I fell face down. The glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east, and the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. While the man was standing beside me, I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. He said, Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. The people of Israel will never again defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings by their prostitution and the funeral offerings for their kings at their death. So this is the final temple, rebuilt. When they placed their threshold next to my threshold, and the doorpost beside my doorpost, with only a wall between me and them, they defiled my holy name by their detestable practices. So I destroyed them in my anger. Now let them put away from me their prostitution and the funeral offerings for their kings, and I will live among them forever. Son of man, describe the temple to the people of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their sins. Let them consider its perfection, and if they are ashamed of all they have done, make known to them the design of the temple, its arrangement, its exits and entrances, its whole design and all its regulations and laws. Write these down before them so that they may be faithful to its design and follow all its regulations. And we don't know if it is faithful to its designs. So I'm saying, if you want to draw this out, somebody who's good at that, see what it looks like, what the final temple is supposed to look like, or its dimensions wide, diagram wide, then please do. This is the law of the temple. All the surrounding area on top of the mountain will be most holy. Such is the law of the temple. These are the measurements of the altar in long cubits. So it goes on to describe the altar as well. Cubit being a cubit and a handbreadth. Its gutters, it's cubit deep and a cubit wide, with a rim of one span around the edge. This is the height of the altar from the gutter on this ground up to the lower edge that goes around the altar. It is 2 cubits high, and the ledge is a cubit high. From this lower ledge to the upper ledge that goes around the altar is 4 cubits high, and that ledge is also a cubit wide. Above that, the altar hearth is 4 cubits high, and 4 horns project upward from the hearth. The altar hearth is square, 12 cubits long, and 12 cubits wide. The upper ledge is also a square, 14 cubits long, and 14 cubits wide. All around the altar is a gutter of 1 cubit with a rim of half a cubit. The steps of the altar face east. So it's a huge altar. Then he said to me, Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says. These will be the regulations for sacrificing burnt offerings and splashing blood against the altar when it is built. You are to give a young bull as a sin offering to the Levitical priests of the family of Zadok, who come near to minister before me, declares the sovereign Lord. You are to take some of its blood and put it on the 4 corners of the altar, 4 horns of the altar, and on the 4 corners of the upper ledge, and all around the rim, to purify the altar and make atonement for it. You will take the bull for the sin offering and burn it in the designated part of the temple area outside the sanctuary. See, this is for the replacement temple, God's temple. Now, he does not want blood offerings, flesh offerings. Your sin offering, your tithe, is your love, your respect, fear, not trembling fear, but respect, fear, honor, obedience, attention, focus on Him, your burdens, your guilt, your sin, your shame, your worries, your concerns. These are the things that He wants. They solely belong to us. No blood offerings anymore. So don't focus on the blood offerings, but explanation of that is done away with. Jesus was the sacrificial lamb, the final blood offering. Those are the dimensions of the rebuilt temple and most likely the final temple. Whether it be visible to us, it will be spiritual dimensions. But then again, God and Spirit, there is no space or time, so I would think that would be a physical. That's my interpretation. It's going to be an actual temple that I'm not sure of. I'm sure there will be. But to me, all of this for God's creation is his temple, is his church. So this may very well just be more of an historical part of Ezekiel. So, excuse me. I'm sorry. And we do get parts of that, especially in the Old Testament. There's a lot of descriptions, historical descriptions, just general FYI. Uh, that maybe very well be the case here in this part. Uh, but again, if you want to try to draw that out, map it out, if you're good at that sort of thing, mechanical drawing, by all means do so. Uh, give yourself an idea. Maybe that's why you were specifically supposed to hear it today. So you could do that. Oh, excuse me. And just a couple more readings of Ezekiel, and we will be done and move on to Jeremiah or Lamentations, and then Jeremiah. So that'll be long as well. So again, stay safe, everybody. Wear your masks. Put yourself last. Think of everybody else. Wear your masks. Social distance. Because again, with this virus, don't know. You just don't. Nobody truly knows its lasting effects. We're learning more and more, or the damage it's doing to you or to your loved ones, somebody you know, intentionally, unintentionally, or unintentionally. I hope unintentionally. So it's just not about you. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about any of us. It's about him. Helping others. Put others before yourself. Peace to Christ. God bless.